Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. And remember, context is everything. Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a textbook cover to cover today. Chapter 33, page 834, Section 2 of Chapter 33, The Western European Democracies. Setting the scene. Please follow. Thank you. We hit over 60 yesterday. 2 big thumbs up. Yes, this will be thumbnail. Thank you. The Western European Democracies. In 1994, an army of bicycles sped through the English countryside, cheered by countless spectators. The event was the famous Tour de France. The cyclists had crossed from France to England through the English Channel Tunnel, nicknamed Chunnel. Chunnel, channel and tunnel mixed together. For the first time since the Ice Age, a land route linked Britain and continental Europe. The Channel reflected closer ties among Britain, France, and other European nations. After World War II, the Western European democracies worked within a framework of international cooperation, including NATO, the EU, and the UN. Each nation, however, faced its own problems and made its own contributions to freedom and prosperity. So the English Channel Tunnel, the Chunnel, that was first ridden by the public in a Tour de France cycling. So the cyclists were the first users, like pedestrian users, of the tunnel. Is that what they're saying? Because if they're not saying that, very misleading writing. New heading, Britain. Changing policies. In 1945, British voters put the Labour Party in power, hoping that it could help the nation recover from World War II. The war had helped change old attitudes towards the working class. The Labour official noted that if a working class boy could save England in a fighter plane, the same brain can be turned to produce a new world. And it did say turned, not trained. The same brain can be turned to produce a new world. Rise and fall of the welfare state. That new world gave rise to the welfare state, in which government expanded benefits such as unemployment insurance and old age pensions. The British government nationalized major industries, built housing for poor, and provided free low-cost medical care. To pay for all this, taxes rose tremendously. By the late 1970s, Britain, like the rest of Europe, was reeling under economic hard times. In 1979, British voters turned to the Conservative Party, which denounced the welfare state as costly and inefficient. The Conservatives were led by Margaret Thatcher, who served 11 years as Britain's Prime Minister. Thatcher's tough. T-O-U-G-H. Is that tough? T-O-U-G-H. Thatcher's tough determination to carry out her policies earned her the nickname Iron Lady. Stressing individual responsibility, Thatcher's government reduced social welfare programs and reduced government-run industries to private control. Returned government-run industries to private control. The changes slowed government spending, but did not revive the British economy as much as conservatives had hoped. Thatcher retired in 1990, but the conservatives remained in power. In 1997, however, the Labour Party finally won a majority in Parliament. Tony Blair, the new Prime Minister, urged government to focus on the needs of the British citizens, not just one segment. He hoped to follow a third way between the traditional right and left. I think that he was kind of just, what would you call him? A new world role. After the war, Britain adjusted to a new role in the world affairs. British Empire shrank as colonies won independence. Still, some former colonies preserved their ties to Britain by joining the Commonwealth of Nations. Weakened by World War II, the loss of the empire, Britain gave up global leadership to its ally in the United States. Yet, it remained a leader in the UN and NATO. Seeking closer ties with the Western Europe nations, it joined the Common Market in 1973. Common Market, European Union. In the 1990s, however, British nationalism led to the reject greater European unity. As the European Union issued euro currency, the British defended the pound. Many British people feared the growing international power of the EU. Brexit happened, 17 years after this book was penned. Northern Ireland, the Troubles. When Ireland won independence in 1922, Britain retained control of 6 northern counties where there was a Protestant majority. Faced with widespread discrimination, Catholics demanded civil rights and reunification of Ireland. Protestants wanted to remain part of Britain. Violence escalated in the 1960s and 1970s as extremists on both sides turned to terrorism. The Irish Republic Army, IRA, attacked Protestants, and Protestant militants targeted Catholics. Britain sent soldiers to keep order in Northern Ireland, but their presence inflamed tensions, especially as they jailed IRA members and violated their civil rights. Peace talks were held on and off for years. Finally, in 1998, the main political parties signed a peace accord. Enacting the agreement proved difficult. Elections were held for a new government that would bring self-rule to Northern Ireland. But lasting peace and political stability were threatened by sporadic acts of violence and by the IRA's refusal to disarm. So the IRA being the Republic of Ireland, Zarmy, right? France, revival and prosperity. Like Britain, France emerged from World War II greatly weakened. The Fourth Republic, set up in 1946, was ineffective and drew criticism from both communists and conservatives. Bloody colonial wars in Vietnam and Algeria further drained and demoralized France. In Algeria, longtime French settlers and the French military opposed Algerian nationalists who wanted independence for the North African country. France itself was so divided over the issue of civil war that civil war threatened. Strange. De Gaulle, Charles. As the crisis worsened, French voters turned to General Charles de Gaulle, a hero of World War II. In 1958, de Gaulle set up the Fifth Republic. Its constitution gave him, as president, great power. Although a staunch nationalist, de Gaulle realized that France must give up Algeria. In 1962, he made peace with the Algerians. Other French colonies in Africa soon won freedom without bloodshed. De Gaulle worked hard to restore French prestige and power. He forged new ties with West Germany, ending a long hostility between the two nations. He developed a French nuclear force and challenged American dominance in Europe. France has nuclear weapons? I didn't know that. He opposed the Cold War stance in the United States by opening talks with Communist China and Cuba. De Gaulle did. Wait a minute. Does France have nuclear weapons? Time for an internet search. Let's check it out. I just feel like they don't. Does France have nuclear weapons? 300 nuclear warheads. With some 300 nuclear warheads, France has much smaller and less diversified arsenal than the United States. Most of the warheads are intended for submarine-launched ballistic missiles. A second airborne component comprises nuclear-capable cruise missiles that can be deployed by a few dozen fighter aircrafts. You know, when you do think about it, it doesn't make much sense to have all these bombs. Since they're really bad, and one goes off, then people are going to retaliate with another. And it just seems like a pretty bad idea. France has 300. De Gaulle worked hard to restore, you already read that. He opposed the Cold War stance of the United States, de Gaulle did, by opening talks with Communist China and Cuba. In 1968, youth revolts shook France. The next year, de Gaulle resigned, although he was widely disliked by the left. He had successfully reasserted French leadership in Europe. France has bombs. I didn't know that. I'll just put this here for now. Why not? Like Britain, economic revival. Like Britain, France nationalized some industries and expanded social welfare benefits after World War II. With government help, industry and business modernized, leaders to new prosperity in the 1970s. In the 1980s, French socialists led by François Mitterrand won power as a global recession hit. At first, Mitterrand tried to nationalize more industries and expand welfare benefits. But when those policies deepened the crisis, he encouraged a growth of private business. In 1995, his successor, Jacques Chirac, took an even more conservative approach. Chirac cut government spending despite protests by farmers, students, and others. Over the years, France overcame internal stresses and global economic swings to build the fourth largest economy in the world. France did. New heading. Not France anymore. Germany. Germany, division and reunification. The early years after World War II were desperate times for Germany. People were starving amid landscapes of destruction. German cities lay in ruins. "Nothing is left in Britain," wrote an American reporter. "There is no homes, no shops, no transportation, no government buildings, only a few walls. Berlin can now be regarded as a geographical location heaped with mountains of debris." New York Herald Tribune, no name attributed to the article, May 3rd, 1945. Germany divided. By 1949, the emerging Cold War had divided Germany. West Germany was a member of Western Alliance, and East Germany lay in the Soviet orbit. For 40 years, differences between the two Germanys widened. The Soviet Union opposed and unified Germany that might threaten Soviet security. West Germany's economic miracle. Early in the Cold War, the United States rushed aid to its former enemy. It wanted to strengthen West Germany against communist Eastern Europe. From 1949 to 1963, Konrad Adenauer was West Germany's chancellor. Konrad Adenauer was West Germany's chancellor, the chief minister. He guided the rebuilding of the city, factories, and trade. Despite high taxes to pay for the recovery, West Germans created a booming industrial economy. This economic miracle raised European fears of German revival. But West Germany worked closely with France and the United States and played a key role in the NATO and European community. This cooperation helped to reduce fear of German strength. Later, Western Germany chancellors came from Socialist Party. West Germany remained a capitalist country, but the government expanded the social welfare benefits. East Germany, under communism. Under communist rule, East Germany's economy stagnated. The Soviet Union exploited West German workers and industry for its own benefit. Still, unemployment was low. The workers had some basic benefits such as health care, housing, and free education. Lured by glittering views of life in the West, however, many East Germans fled. As you have read, this mass exodus led to the building of the Berlin Wall in 1961. Overnight, the migration ended. Occasionally, an East German made a dramatic escape. Occasionally, an East German person made a dramatic escape. Many died in the attempt to escape from East Berlin. Is that what they're saying? Reunification. In 1969, West German Chancellor Willy Brandt tried to ease tensions with communist neighbors to the east. He called his policy Ostpolitik, or Eastern politics. Brandt kept close ties to the West, but signed treaties with the Soviet Union and Poland. He established economic ties to Western Europe and signed a treaty of mutual recognition with Eastern Europe and signed a treaty of unification with Eastern Germany. He established economic ties with Eastern Europe and signed a treaty of mutual recognition with East Germany. In the midst of the Cold War, however, Brandt's long-term goal of reunifying Germany seemed impossible. In 1989, the Soviet communism declined. Germany was able to move toward reunification. Without Soviet backing, East German communist leaders were ousted. In Berlin, people from both Germanies clambered up the hated wall and began to tear it down. West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl assured both Soviet Union and West that unified Germany would pose no threat to peace. In the 1990, German voters approved reunification and Kohl became Chancellor of a united Germany. New challenges. Germans welcomed unity even though it brought some serious problems. Prosperous West Germans had to pay higher taxes, finance the rebuilding of the East. At the same time, East Germans faced difficult transition to a market economy. As old government-run factories closed, unemployment rose. Political parties sought ways to deal with economic troubles. A few right-wing extremists revived Nazi ideology, seeing the answer to hard times in racism and hatred. These neo-Nazis viciously attacked foreign workers. Most Germans condemned such actions and worked instead to fulfill the hopes of unity. At the end of the 1990s, it seemed that an alliance of moderate political elements would lead Germany toward a prosperous period of social reform and economic growth, which it did. Right? Other democratic nations. New heading. Final heading. Thank you. Thank you, all 63 subscribers. Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you to everybody else who's watching just to watch. Thank you. If you made it this far, it's free. Please subscribe. Thank you. Other parts of Western Europe slowly recovered from the war. The Scandinavian countries of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark created extensive socialist welfare programs. By the 1990s, rising costs revived debate about how much people were willing to pay for the welfare state. Yet many people saw these social programs as essential to democratic society. Italy. In Italy, long-term regional differences continued to divide the country. In the urban north, industries rebuilt prospered after World War II. In the rural south, the largely peasant population remained much poorer. Political division also led to instability. Since no one political party could win a lasting majority, Italy experienced one coalition government after another. A coalition is a temporary alliance of political parties. Corruption and financial scandals added to the instability. Meanwhile, the mafia, a violent criminal syndicate, defied government efforts to end its power, especially in the south. Despite these problems, Italy made impressive economic gains and ranked as a leading industrial nation. Spain, Portugal, and Greece. Change came slowly to the other countries of southern Europe. In 1945, Spain, Portugal, and Greece were economically undeveloped, with large peasant populations. In Spain and Portugal, dictators clung to power for decades. Finally, in the 1970s, both Spain's Francisco Franco and Portugal's Antonio de Oliveira Salazar died. Their authoritarian governments soon collapsed. Both countries adopted democratic governments and eventually joined NATO and the EU. Their economies have grown rapidly since. Greece faced difficult obstacles on the path to democratic rule. After World War II, the Greek government needed American aid to defeat communist rebels. Then, in 1967, military rulers came to power. A crisis emerged in 1974 when the government supported an attempt to bring Cyprus under Greek rule. Cyprus is a Mediterranean island inhabited by Greeks and Turks. The incident brought Greece and Turkey to the brink of war and led to the downfall of the military regime. Cyprus was divided into two zones, one ruled by Greeks and the other ruled by Turks. In 1975, Greece returned to democratic rule. Thank you for bringing subscribers over 60. Thank you. God bless. Goodbye.